I mean, because obviously we were in here discussing this as, you know, we'd broken the story about
every night.
This takeover. We're talking about every night, but we were also conscious of the fact as the season was going on, it's taking longer than people expected for this to complete. And the longer it took, the more Rangers were behind the 8 ball for starting this season, which they've now started with Tuesday night's 2-0 win over Panathinaikos. But you do feel they're scrambling a little bit just now, don't you, Paul? It's kind of, I know it's early season, but there's so much work to do, and this is probably stuff in an ideal world the takeover would have been completed a couple of months earlier, and these building blocks could have been put down then. But they feel as if they're up against it from the start this season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you all these things, you want these things to be dealt with. You always want it dealt with quicker than actually happens. I mean, I know from, you know, my own involvement with Rangers and also other businesses, these things take time. Unfortunately, you've got legal documents, you've got due diligence. I actually think it's a good thing it took 7 months, because, in a funny kind of way, because basically they did extensive due diligence on the club, every aspect of the club, and therefore you like to think that they're going into this thing knowing, they don't know everything, obviously, they don't have the history, but they basically know, you know, all the key things to know about the club. And it's a good thing. They're coming into this thing with, you know, eyes wide open, having done extensive due diligence. And I think the fact that they did all that due diligence and still proceeded with the deal, that's a good thing. Now, you know, if you ask me as a fan, would I preferred it to be done in February rather than May? Absolutely. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, this isn't going to be a kind of 12-month deal, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, we want a challenge for the title, and you need players to do that, and all the, you know, we know all that stuff. But you know, this is not a short-term project. So okay, it took a few months longer than expected, but in the grand scheme of things, it's more important. We've got the future foundations in place than a short-term, you know, players here and there.
But you know better than anybody, fans are impatient. They want,
of course,
they want success yesterday.
Yeah, and Rangers fans are like that, you know, and I'm a fan, I'm the same. But what I would say to the fans is that, you know, and this is a fan myself, you know, please be patient. You know, give these guys time. You know, there's going to be bumps in the road. I mean, you even saw it on Tuesday, and it was still in pre-season, basically. You know, there's going to be bumps in the road. This will not be plain sailing. This will not be just, we've got these guys in, they've got a lot of money, it's going to go like that. That's not going to happen. It might happen. If it does, brilliant. But let's be realistic. It's going to take time. You know, there's a whole reshaping of the squad, you know, players in, players out. So it's going to take time, and you know, there'll be difficult results along the way. But let's be patient. You know, I think to me, you know, this is a great deal for the club. And you know, that's more important than the short term. Now, if we want to get the short term right as well, but you know, to me, it's more important that we've got, you know, owners now in who I think can really add a lot of value. You know, big thanks to the guys that were there before, but this is now, you know, a new era. So I think let's be patient if we can. I mean, I know patience not always in great supply, but let's try and be patient. You know?
The Rangers fans have waited 10 years to get to this point, so there's no point rushing.
Well, I mean, you know, and I said before, I did think, and you can pull out the interview, I did think it would take 10 years, because you have to remember, I mean, I think, actually, I've spoken to John Gilligan about this quite a bit, and I've got a huge amount of respect for John, good friend of mine, and he was one of the other, you know, key guys in the last 10 years. And John and I, you know, we actually laughed quite a bit about the Caw and Keith thing, and you know how bad that was, and we never really told. I mean, we weren't trying to hide anything, but you know, I think when we went in on the Monday morning after the Friday and after Caw and Keith, just the extent to which the club had been broken was actually really distressing. I mean, you have no idea how bad it was, and I mean, we never really said how bad it actually was. So you've got a thing that had been...
In what way? The finances,
everything,
the structure, the staff?
Everything. So everything you need to run, let's call it an elite football club, sporting, any organisation, basically, frankly, it was absolutely broken in every single bit. There was nothing of it functioning. And you know, at that time, it was basically John and I, and Dave was obviously there as well, but he was in South Africa. And then, of course, Stuart Robertson arrived, etc. But, you know, it was a really tough time. So, you know, I actually think to take it from that point, and also you're against a Celtic, you know, team in the widest sense that were flying high on the pitch, and also financially had all this advantage. And that was partly because we'd been demoted down the leagues, and obviously we'd had to come back. So I actually think, to win, you obviously want to win every title and all the rest of it, but I think within that 10-year period, and there's been lots of mistakes, and I was part of that. I made mistakes as well, but as I said before, football's not a guarantee. You don't come in and suddenly do things, and it's one of these things. What I would say, it was all well intentioned. The guys that were there were doing it for the right reasons. They put a lot of money in, as we said before. But so I actually think winning a title, and it's quite an important title, let's be honest, and getting to a European final, I think that's actually, in the context of everything else, that's not a bad achievement.
No, that's huge. Yeah.
If you just take a step back and just get a bit of perspective and a bit of context, I think that's actually quite impressive.